here. It's been a couple weeks here now, but we have some special guests for this week. We managed to bribe, get a few other people to come back on the show. We're lucky this week. We have AllynMarie Smedley and Alison Weinroth from the Smedley Law Group with us. They're going to be hanging out, adding what they can, and we're going to be hopefully having a good time this week. So,
giving the attorney take on certain things in real estate.
Awful things in real estate. And also awful things in attorney law. We'll find out. So, let's go. We've been gone for a couple weeks now, guys. And
some vacations.
What have we been up to? Yeah, what have we been up to? I know I've been gone, but what have you been doing, Omar?
So I just came back from Williamsburg, Virginia. I went to Busch Gardens for the first time in my life.
That sounds miserable.
Because my family was poor growing up, and so all the things that my son is doing for the first time as a 9-year-old, I'm doing for the first time as a 47-year-old. And I rode every roller coaster 4 times. Oh yeah. And my son, he's a little daredevil, so we're just going on and on and on, and then my wife is just holding everybody's bags like.
You won't go on rides?
She gets motion sickness. So thankfully, like, none of that stuff bothers me. I actually do, and I'm not like forcing it. Like, I'm probably having more fun than he is. And
right.
So it was a blast. So
he's like, I don't want to do it anymore. You're like, come on.
Yeah, one more time. So we're probably gonna hit like Great Adventure next because it's not a 5-hour drive to get.
Yeah, it's
You
close.
want to do a real daredevil thing? Go on the Velocicoaster at Universal.
Yeah, we've done that.
My daughter conned me into going on that, and I sat behind her the whole time, just was like screaming, "I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die!"
So what
I
is
used
this?
to be
What's
The Velocicoaster
I never
The
heard of
Velocicoaster?
it.
at Universal. Yeah, it is insanely fast. It takes you out over water. It's just brutal, and I shrieked like the whole time, and her and her friend are in front of me like cackling
Did
like
they get
idiots.
the picture at the end? Like they always take the
Probably,
picture
yeah, but I
and then-
probably like ran and was like, I don't want to see this. Don't show me. Don't show me.
You know what's funny about those pictures is that every time I walk by them, I never ever am gonna buy it, but I will always try to like sneak shot it.
Yes,
I've
I've done
And
that.
I'll zoom in and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh look, there's the picture that nobody ever wants because they come up, they're like, I don't want to remember that time that I'm stuck on the ride.
I
Well,
think
now-
it's more interesting is the other people sometimes in those pictures. Like some people look like they're, like writing a grocery list. Like they're just bored.
You go up and you buy another. You're like, that's me, but I don't want that one. I want that one. That's somebody completely different.
So when I was like a teenager, I was out on my own like when I was 18, and I had this like weird little inside joke with no purpose whatsoever other than just getting reactions. Was I would go to like a home goods like type place and buy picture frames, and I would just leave in the stock picture. And what would always happen is people would come in and they would say like, oh my God, who is this? They're so adorable. And I would like either have some like fictitious story and I'd like deep dive into this generic picture. And then finally I would reveal that like, I have no idea who it is. That's just a picture that came with
Why didn't you put a real picture in it?
Well, I had real pictures, but it would be peppered in with other stuff because everything was just always just a big like joke, just some reason like a conversation starter that just ended in people laughing.
That's
People
funny.
at your house, they're like, why does all Omar's friends throw their baby up in the air?
I just saw on Facebook that somebody who was working in like a Goodwill store filled all the picture frames with pictures of Jeff Goldblum. Every single one of them was Jeff Goldblum in a different pose. Like, who does that?
Nicolas Cage would be another good one to just have like Nicolas Cage in like family photos. We had a friend, they would superimpose him in like a wedding photo, and they put him over like the person who's not there anymore. It's always like a boyfriend or girlfriend that's no longer around. They put Nicolas Cage's face on that picture. It's fantastic.
That is funny.
I just saw a similar one where somebody like went down an aisle. It was like Target or something similar, and it was a bunch of pictures of like a guy and his girlfriend. And she starts looking. She's like, "Wait a minute, this is us." And here he ended up like proposing to her in the aisle there, seeing like all this.
That's sweet.
It's a lot of
That's
setup.
nice.
I would never do anything that cute or romantic.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It sounds like
Yeah,
a lot of
That's a lot of too much work for
Can you
me.
imagine getting caught by one of the Target employees? Like, what are you doing?
Somebody with a red shirt ruins your proposal.
Yeah.
Sir.
He's got a scan gun. He's like, no, get out of here. But so for you guys, now Easter, spring break? I don't know if you guys get to celebrate either of those two things, but have you done? Did you take any good vacations? Have you gone away? Is there anything good going on?
No, my kids went away.
Okay.
And
Where'd they
my
go?
kids were both able to go to Florida, so they went away for spring break.
What
You
part?
know, typical. My daughter was in Fort Lauderdale. My son was, I don't even remember, somewhere else.
Was it actual
Like
spring
so-
break? Like they went.
Yeah,
to
it was their spring
Okay.
first college spring break. So like they lived the
Jealous.
dream.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
And I worked. I came to work every day, but I went away this weekend.
Where'd you go?
So I went to Kentucky, where
Oh,
my son goes to college, to watch a soccer game, watch him play soccer, and it got rained out. Oh, jeez.
so it's a lot of traveling.
Oh no.
All that effort just to get.
So
like,
my
rained
daughter
out.
flew from Alabama to Kentucky, and I flew from Philly to Kentucky to go see his last soccer game, and it was hailing.
Did they just cancel it, or is it like
It's
now it's
it's
pushed to-
rescheduled for Tuesday.
That's not.
So he told me to stay or either come back on Tuesday. I told him that's not going to happen.
Aw.
So yeah, so that kind of stinks, but it was fun.
How's Kentucky? Did you have a good time anyway?
Kentucky's actually really nice.
I know. I've heard.
I know, like it's kind of surprising. I mean, he's right on the border of Cincinnati. They're right on the Ohio border, so like they go into Cincinnati all the time. It's 10 minutes away.
That's like our Philly. Like we're
Right, exactly. But it's really pretty. Like there's actually hills and like I don't know, it's just pretty there.
Scenic.
It's not what you would think. You're like Kentucky, and then you're like, wow, it's kind of
I
nice.
always think of Cracker Barrel because that's the only thing I ever stopped at in Kentucky. It's like you pull up.
Really?
Let's get Cracker Barrel. Let's get the what is it? The moon's over my. No, that's Denny's.
That's Denny's.
That's Denny's.
That's Denny's.
Cracker
Moon's
Barrel
over my
has
hammy.
everything smothered in like their sausage gravy and
Yeah, and
biscuits.
the gravy.
I just ate a Cracker Barrel on the way back from Virginia,
Virginia.
and my kids had the son had a blast in the gift shop. It was like overload for him.
Well, it is overload just walking in there. You're like,
Yeah.
which way do I look?
They
Yeah.
combine Target and food at the same place.
Yep.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
lose their minds. They're like, well, I'm
Right.
going to pay for dinner and I'm just going to buy this puzzle. Like,
With
why
a
do
hint
you
of
need?
Paula Deen.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's wild. And did you go anywhere or did you do anything?
So my daughter's spring break, she's a sophomore in
Okay.
college, was spent in Myrtle Beach at a cheerleading competition.
Did you go?
Yes.
Was it
Yeah.
fun?
Yeah.
How'd
it
they
was
do it?
fun.
It's not convincing.
I mean, that's a tentative yes,
Because
but like,
when you go to these cheerleading competitions, you don't get to do anything else. Like they have rules. You can't go swimming before the competition. You have curfews. So her best friend goes to school at Coastal, which
Okay.
is right there. So we went down a day early so they could hang out.
and she's not. She was
And
not part of the cheerleading.
she was cheering when she was up here in high school.
Okay.
So she's not cheering while she's at Coastal. But because you can cheer a little longer based on like your age, she's still in it.
Okay.
So we went down there, we had 2 really good performances, and then we came in 4th because all-star cheerleading is super subjective. If you want a sport where you're going to spend all your time and all your money, all-star, it's the way to go.
Really?
Yes.
That sounds like a losing battle. Like I've actually, I've been flipping it on ESPN 9 or whatever. It pops up. It's like, oh, this is a cheerleading competition, so it's on any kind of competition I'm in. I stopped and looked. I was like, I don't know how they judge any of this.
It's insane. So they have metrics that score like the different kind of stunts, and the stunts are based on levels, like 1 through 6. So if you're say like a level 4, which is what she is, you have to do these certain stunts, and then there's ranges of difficulty within the
So
stunts.
there's mandatory things they have to do.
Yeah, they have to do like what's called an elite stunt sequence, and then they have a list of like all these different stunts that fall under that.
Like checkpoints to be able to compete
Yeah.
in that level.
And they have numbers. Like, so they'll say like, okay, if you have a team that has 22 athletes, 18 of them have to tumble if it's a tumble team. So then
Right.
they check that. And if
You're
your
like,
team,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
if your team has that same like 22, you have to put up at least 4 stunt groups.
Okay.
So there's like all these rules and regulations that they have to follow, and then it comes up with a score. But the subjectivity comes in is like if the judges don't like how you transition from one thing to another, or they think your execution's not great, your score gets dinged
Right.
on that. So you could look and go, okay, they did technically a clean routine, and the judges could still say, yeah, we didn't like it.
Like it was like not entertaining enough.
Yeah,
or-
not
Or to
entertaining
their
enough.
liking.
Yeah, or they have rules like in the dance that you have to have like partner work while you're doing some of the stuff. So like you'd have to like, like grab arms with somebody, and like if you don't do that, you'll get dinged for it.
I
It's
don't like that.
one of those things like when you first joined, I didn't understand anything.
Well, it's like
Okay.
art.
Not a thing. And she's been doing it for 10 years. So
Right.
now I can look and I'm like, that wasn't right. They missed the grip on this. It's like you become sucked in. It's crazy.
Well, that's like the fun of like the Olympics is like me pretending that I'm the judge. Like I'll watch like the Winter Olympics and there's ice skating and I'll be sitting there like, "Ugh," like thumbs down. Like these people
Right.
are like elite
8.2,
athletes.
8.2.
I'll ding them a point on that because I think that I know so much, and like my scores are never ever correct on what they are. But the whole fun is like being able to judge other people who are
true.
way better at what they do than I am at anything that I
Yeah.
do.
Dude, one of the best is watching like the diving in the Olympics because then everyone's there's too much splash.
You become an
You're literally
expert.
hurling yourself in a body of water. Like,
Right.
what do you
From
expect?
100 feet in the air.
Right.
Oh, look at that splash! It was awful. Too much splash. Like
Too much.
That's all I
body
can picture.
exposure hitting the water.
You just end up making up stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what matters.
It is a real metric, but it's the only one I can judge.
Right.
That's the only thing I can.
Yeah. So now, like in like inappropriate scenarios, it's like someone's like doing dishes. Too much splash. It's
So
like a tick.
So I went out to Vegas, and my past experience, I've enjoyed it. I've done it on like the cheap. I didn't realize how expensive Vegas has gotten.
Oh.
Okay.
It's brutal.
Any
$100.
travel's gotten expensive.
$100 for breakfast, $100 for lunch, $200 for dinner, and like,
And that's actually cheap.
and that's not gambling at all, which I just lose. So it's a very expensive trip. It wasn't a ton of fun. I had a good time with my wife out there, but I think it's a one and done. We're not going back to Vegas.
Yeah.
It's a losing prop. So, so before we actually jump in, how much prep have you guys done for this show? Have you guys watched our whole catalog of like brilliant episode after episode?
None, if I'm being honest.
Okay, awesome.
I watched
So you've
one.
done more than most people.
I watched one
So-
Show
which
off.
is yeah.
just to be like, hey, I watched something.
Well, ready to set the bar because this show is on a rocket ship to the moon. But
Just like Dogecoin.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you do and how it interacts with real estate. So we actually get a little bit of this in here. So, real estate, family law. How did you guys get into family law? Like, there's always a good origin story for this. Like, did you set out originally to become in family law, or was it a spot where it kind of found you?
I set out to be a criminal attorney.
Okay.
I wanted to either put them all in jail or get them all out of jail. I couldn't decide.
matter, yeah.
I didn't know which side. And then somehow, I think it's like by mistake, you touch family law with like the tip of your finger, and then it just pulls you.
So you don't
It's like the
find
mafia.
family law finds you.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened. That I kind of said like, oh, family law. I kind of like said it out loud, and someone said, oh, you said it? Come on in.
And then now you're wrapped up and you can't leave.
Yeah, and I originally tried to get out of it. Like my parents were divorced. I eventually got divorced. So like I was like, I don't need people's problems. Like I got enough of my own here. So I tried to get out of it, and no matter what other type of law I put my hand in, family law just came right back.
See, when I think of family law from an outsider perspective, not having anything, it seems like the most emotionally taxing type of law you can get into, because it's like there's nothing more annoying than like family at Thanksgiving. So family
This is
with
on
divorce,
steroids.
with taking it apart it seems like the most like the craziest type of law you can get into. So now, when you said you wanted to become an attorney, was there a specific point when you were younger that you were like, "Hey, I want to do this"? Like, you see somebody, you're like, "Oh, that's it. That makes me want to do it."
I always wanted to be a lawyer. My dad's a lawyer, but that really wasn't it. I always enjoyed it, and I danced my whole life. So my family always used to tell me that I was going to become a tap dancing judge, and that's what I was going to do during breaks in court.
That keep
And
them all entertained, though.
I always wanted to be an attorney. My dad told me not to. He said, do anything but become a lawyer. So I think as a teenager, a lot of that was like, no, you told me not to do it.
Now
I'm
I'm gonna do it."
so doing
That's exactly
it.
what I'm going
So
to
he
do.
Exactly.
drove you right into the arms of the law.
Exactly.
Right.
And now I'm going, why didn't I listen to him?
Now, what type of law did your father practice?
My dad really was a business guy,
Okay.
but he really did a lot of collection work. So
Okay.
he did collection work for hospitals
Right.
and then started businesses.
Right.
And now he's still at 84 years old. He does estate law.
Okay.
So he's, yeah.
He has nowhere, like, that's what he does for fun. Like, because at that
Yeah,
point,
yeah, that's what
like,
it,
that's
yeah.
fun for you to do. it.
Exactly. That's like, he doesn't know what else to do. That's his enjoyment. It is.
Now, like, for you, what brought you to family law? Was it necessity, or was it like something you set out for?
I didn't set out to be a lawyer at all.
Oh.
My college undergrad degree is in marketing.
Oh.
And I graduated, got a job selling jewelry.
In like one of those, like a K jeweler or
Yeah,
something like that?
yeah,
Okay.
something like
so
that.
So were you in a mall?
No, we were in a freestanding store.
Okay.
But better.
But better, yes.
Like,
Yes. And I got in a car accident while I was at work. So I was working in the office. You have to take the bank deposit, every day. So I would leave the store, I'd go drive to the bank, and I got rear-ended on the way to the bank. Not anything like horrible, but I have a herniated disc, and the accident aggravated it, and I ended up on disability. And my boss at the time was fairly pissed off because it was leading into the Christmas selling season.
that's the
So
only time
they got big three: Christmas, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. So this was leading into Christmas. I'm out of work. I was out of work for 6 weeks. They were not happy. And I started going, okay, well, what else am I good at? I had a business law course when I was in college. It was just part of the business program. And I did really well in that. I was like, maybe I'll go to law school. So it was
like, you were just kind of like, hey.
yeah, I was like, I said to my husband, I was like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I tried getting a job in marketing when I got out of college. I didn't get it. I said, what do you think about me going to law school? He was like, go ahead. We were really young. We were broke. So I was like, okay. So I went to law school, and all the way through my last semester. So when you go at night, it's 4 years, not 3.
Okay.
So my last semester of my 4th year, I took a family law class, and everything was familiar because my parents are divorced. So I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, I know this. I know this. I know this. Wow, that looks familiar too.
So it resonated.
So it resonated with me. And so I did a clerkship with a family court judge in Cumberland County. And by that point, like, that's what you know. So then I applied for a family law position, and I've just done that ever since.
Like I was saying, like, you can't get out once you
Yeah, I haven't done any other types. Like, I've actually, in periods of frustration, said to my husband, I'm like, do I have any other skill set other than this that like I could like parlay into employment? He's like, no.
How are your post-it skills?
Right. It's hard because once you say like, oh, I'm an attorney, people ask you like questions about stuff that I'm like, I have no idea what you're even asking me.
That's actually a question I have for you, because whenever I meet an attorney, I have a scroll of things. I'm like, well, do you know what my neighbor did?
I mean, a lot of it, I just like, I'll give a common sense answer.
Yeah, like a lot of it's logic.
People don't have that.
And then people like me are like, you know what an attorney told me? This. It's exactly what I thought.
So it's like you learn what you do. So like for me to say, oh, I'm going to become a workers' compensation attorney, like I would become a new attorney. So I'd have to like go back to the beginning, and who wants to go back to the beginning?
Because you get locked in. So like, you're going back to a lower income.
Yeah.
And you're bottom of the ladder in terms of seniority. So you learn like ancillary stuff. Like I learned a little bit about real estate. I learned a little bit about bankruptcy.
Right.
I've learned,
what comes up in your case,
touch it. A little bit about personal injury, just because they all kind of touch what we do. But I wouldn't feel comfortable at this point, like going, I'm going to go start an estate planning practice.
Gotcha.
Because it's just, there's so much in there that you need to know so you don't commit malpractice.
Right.
That I would not be comfortable just going, I'm always amazed when I see that like on Facebook, I'm going to change practice areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, is that normal? Like, do a lot of attorneys change from where they start to where they wind up?
In the beginning, maybe, but it's kind of what you know, and that's what you do. I mean, it depends. There's some types of laws that play off of each other. So you can do criminal law and also do like restraining orders.
Okay.
Because they kind of like play off of each other a little bit.
You're in the same ballpark.
Right. Or you can do personal injury and also do traffic tickets. Because like it's kind of, you understand the terminology.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's part of it. But I think it would be hard to say like start something brand new. Whereas my guess is in real estate, you could say like, oh, can you say like, I'm selling houses now, but let's go do commercial real estate.
I mean, I honestly think in real estate, people jump in and out of this business more than any other, I think. Because what happens is like everybody, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but HGTV is on everywhere. And people look at real estate agents and they're like, well, they're not doing a lot and they seem like they're getting paid okay.
Right.
And that's why I started. Because I was like, oh, well, can I do the least amount of work and make the most amount of money? And I was
Sounds like I'm
in.
I have a really good hairline.
I was just going to say, you have a full head of hair.
Like a full
Let's
head
go.
of hair and a very strong jaw.
It's like
People
Samson.
like me. They did not. But like people jump into real estate because of that. It's very easy to transition. So the bar to get into real estate is probably the opposite of the actual bar that you guys pass. is are you breathing, and did you take the 40-hour class? And are you willing to pay our fees? So they're considered real estate agents, and that's why it's funny in our business. Like, you could be a real estate agent and not know how good they are until you're like, oh, this person knows nothing. Or they can be awesome and they have the same exact title. So that's something that drives me crazy, because there's no way to differentiate between like realtor and like bad realtor. They're just the same title.
Right.
It's like
Law's
an
kind of
attorney.
the same.
What's that?
It is.
Law's kind of the same.
Like, we're all lawyers.
We're all lawyers. We all have the
How
same
do you
degree.
find the good ones? And like, that's the thing, is like, when you're out there marketing, you want to be like, well, this is what I do that's different. But they're like, I don't care. I just want to find a house.
Right.
Or I just want to get divorced. Or
I think a lot of times
Right.
people don't realize they didn't have maybe a thorough, which I don't want to say bad, but maybe someone who's not as thorough as somebody else,
Until you
or not as
actually
well
do it.
versed, until they go to live the consequences of the outcome of their case. And then somebody like Allison and I will look at their agreement and go, oh, well, it's missing this, it's missing this. Why doesn't
True.
it say this? And then like they realize, and it's kind of like a light bulb goes on, and they're like,
I just got
Why
hacked
didn't-
somewhere before. They might have been very happy before, but their knowledge of knowing like what they're missing out on
yeah.
Right.
is enlightened. They're like, oh, I'm
Well,
a sucker here.
I think
Right.
one of the eye openers, and even prior to real estate, like being a personal trainer, one of the things that I would teach my employees, and I learned it myself, is my favorite person to take on a client is someone who literally has worked with anyone else, because they will have a real living frame of reference in the difference of quality
Yes.
from one
Yep.
person to another. And in many industries, I would say it applied in personal training for sure, and in real estate, is that statistically there's a good chance that if somebody worked with another agent, that they're going to have a much better experience with myself and anybody on my team,
Right.
And others outside of our organization here too, only because we know what we're capable of. We know the higher level of service that we deliver and that we stand behind, and the level of caring behind it. And I can't speak on the behalf of other agents out there. Now, from interaction and cooperative relationships with people, we definitely can see what agents are cut from the same cloth, which are like higher level agents. And it's not always the senior most agents either. I've had agents where it's like their second, third transaction in, and their level of just common sense is probably the best way. I can't even say experience, common sense and ethics just blew the doors off of people that have been in the industry for decades and have done hundreds of transactions. Because there's some powerhouse agents out there too that are really not good at their job. What they are good at is marketing. And getting
Yeah.
new clients, but the repeat business is what suffers. For us, our outlook is more so like grassroots. Like, we want past clients to keep coming back and keep them happy, because I feel like that's a much more solid foundation to build a business on, because that has sustainability and
Right.
lasting power.
Right.
And that goes to any industry too. I mean,
But I
certainly in
think
yours.
the two things that you said was common sense and ethics. And I think that goes across the board in any industry.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
if you have somebody on the other side, or that you're working with, that has common sense and ethics, so much more is going to be accomplished, and accomplished successfully.
Right.
Than when you have somebody who, like, maybe they have common sense, but they have zero ethics, and you're
Right.
like, here we go. Or you have someone who has ethics, but they don't
They don't have any.
Right.
any common
Right.
sense. And so I find even for us, it's like that.
Yeah.
Like, if we have an attorney, I'm like, really, 2 + 2 = 4. Like, let's be realistic about it. If they don't have that, it doesn't matter what you do, but you're behind the 8 ball, essentially.
And I think that's what, in business, you want to surround yourself with people, because you can't stop people from getting licensed as a realtor. You can't stop them from becoming attorneys, but you can choose to not work with people that don't make your life easier. So, like, surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, with the right talents and the right mindset to get, like, the job done is, I think, the biggest thing that we've managed to do. And, like, cutting out the people that don't help you get where you want to go is the biggest, like, career hack you could do. It makes you happy, it makes you fulfilled, and it allows
So
you to...
how do you do that?
If you notice something, like, it's hard to do when you're stuck with them.
Right.
But if you can avoid having to deal with those people, and like in real estate, it's really, like, people pay us to find the houses, but you can find the house on Zillow now. Like, you can find a house on Zillow. What do you really pay a real estate agent for? It's really their network and their expertise in walking you through a process that we've done hundreds of times.
Right.
That they are doing the second or third time, maybe it's the first time.
Right.
And they're like, well, what do I do here? It's like, all right, well, we know contractors, we know electricians, we know plumbers, we know attorneys, we know whatever situation comes up, we have an answer and a professional that we know is going to get that job done.
And we're going to get to the end result much faster and more efficiently. It's probably the biggest thing. I mean, I think generally speaking, most people can learn any new talent given enough time to really dive into it. Like if I wanted to learn any type of mechanics, okay, I can start and go to school, but can I sacrifice the time and put everything else on hold to do that, to save myself the money of paying the professional to do it? That's where, like, can I cut my own grass? Sure I can, but how much work am I going to lose doing it myself? So I look at, all right, the amount of money that I pay a landscaper to cut my grass, because it's not just, okay, cut the grass. It's, I have to house all the equipment, I have to service the equipment, I have to fuel the equipment. I'm going to get really dirty in the process, and I have to clean all those clothes, I have to shower immediately. Mm-hmm. It's not just that 30 minutes, 45 minutes out there, and he's got a whole crew of people getting in there in that time. I'm like 8 hours deep by the time it's all said and done, just on the timepiece. I'm like, I would lose too much work doing that. So again, that comes down to, these are sort of the less obvious reasons of hiring a professional in any arena.
I agree.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go like, well, then the lawyer is superfluous. Like, we don't need you. You're just writing a letter, or you're just doing this, or you're just doing that. But it's what they don't realize is the experience that goes into be able to do it quickly, to be able to do it correctly, to be able to pick up all the little side issues that maybe they're not going to pick up. Because I've looked at settlement agreements that people have done themselves, and I'm like, well, what about this? Or you don't have a trigger for that. You don't have this. And then they start going like, I didn't know. Like, loopholes. That's why you need the attorney.
Yeah.
Because we know, because we've encountered all of these
We've had all
scenarios. Like, like over the years, I've learned, like, if I do a motion for X, I need to include these other various types of relief that's going to facilitate the execution of the order, rather than having to go back to court a second time. And a lot of people don't realize that, like, that's part of what the experience is. And I'm sure you've had this too. Like, I've had people go, I wish I had you the first time. I wish I had you when I did my divorce, instead of doing the cleanup on the post-judgment issues. Because then they find out that the agreement was not written well, or they didn't cover all the issues, or it wasn't adequately explained to them. And, it's, when we do that, we don't do it in a way where we're throwing the other attorney under a bus. Like, that's not my job.
Sometimes they deserve it.
That's not my job. But my job is
hope the bus comes by really quick.
But my job is to look and ask the questions that I know. Like, if I draft the agreement, I'm looking for these particular things to be in it. And when I don't see them, I'm like, okay, well, what about? Like, you'll see, like, somebody goes, okay, well, the husband's going to pay $100 a week in child support. I'm like, okay, what about unreimbursed medical expenses? And they're like, huh? Like, law says you guys got to share those. Oh, so now you've got this unresolved issue that wasn't negotiated as part of the main agreement, and then you have to deal with that issue. And a lot of times they spend more money fixing it than had they just hired us in the first place to handle it.
Yeah. And not for nothing. I mean, I've been divorced myself. Anyone who's going through divorce, the one thing I know with certainty that they want is just to be done.
Some don't, actually.
Well, the ones that
fight.
The ones that are holding on or more.
Or some of them just, they're mad and they want the fight. But most of them, and there's wanting to be done in a way that doesn't screw you over for all eternity.
Sure.
And the ones that are done and they entered an agreement that's bad, and then we end up telling them when they come to see us, that's not the best deal. Well, I just wanted to be finished. I'm like, okay, but now you have to live the consequences of that.
So when you guys do you guys have the issue when you have these different people that are not necessarily doing the most efficient job? Is it a price issue that they usually are like, hey, let's just do this? Because I drive down 130, there's a lawyer that's like, hey, get divorced for $300.
Don't use those.
No, I mean,
say that into the microphone.
Don't use it for $300.
Yes.
But, like, so is it usually a price issue that you're like, oh, these people, they try to do it on the cheap or on their own or LegalZoom or whatever to try to fix things, and there's always things that, you're going to know that other people didn't. And this is like, if you look at doctors, if you're having heart surgery, you don't want the doctor who's never done a heart surgery before. You want the one who's done it 10,000
Or your
times.
neighbor, you're not going to be like, hey, do you have some time tomorrow? Could you like cut this open and take
Right.
care of it?
I got
Like,
a real pain right
right.
here.
You've had heart surgery before, right?
You
know what
can
you're
do
doing.
it on me.
And that's a
I
lot
think
of
people
time.
get afraid. I mean, legal services are not cheap.
No.
Like when my prior firm dissolved, I had to hire an attorney to handle that breakup. So I had to deal with that personally. It's not cheap, but if you don't do it correctly, think of it as it's an investment in your future. You're disentangling yourself from this person that you no longer want to be with. And the agreement you reach at the end of that is literally the contract that's going to govern everything. The conduct between that person and you and your children. Who's paying for what? Who's doing what? How does this resolve? And especially if you get divorced with young kids, I mean, you're looking at like, you could be 10, 15, 20 years still tied to this person. And if you have a bad agreement,
That's going to haunt you for decades.
it haunts you for
It's a bad
decades.
contract. It's a bad contract
It's a
for
bad
your life.
contract. I've said that to people. I had a family member who got divorced and I read their agreement. I was like, why did you sign this? I just wanted to be done. I'm like, well, now this headache that we're dealing with
You're
now
never gonna be done.
is the result.
It's just begun. It's
Yeah,
not
like
done.
now you have this problem because you signed this shit agreement, and now we have to deal with it.
Nobody's listening. Feel free, let it rip.
So I think people when they're confronted with a fee or retainer request, and they're like, I can't afford that. Well, can you afford all the fees you're going to pay later to fix
Usually
whatever
it's
you
no
had
vote.
done on the
Yeah.
cheap?
Right.
I mean, you really, I think the best way to explain it is almost like it's an insurance policy.
Yeah.
Protecting you against a whole lot of things that if you think this is expensive, where do you see the ramifications of not handling it in an appropriate manner with the appropriate professional guiding you every step of the way?
Right. I try and liken it too to like an everyday thing. So like if I have a leak in my sink, I might like peek under the sink, what's going on or whatever. But if I start taking things apart, it's not going to be a good result, like at all.
When the guy comes in, he's like, well, who moved this?
Yeah, I'll be like,
Why was this done this way?
So to me, like I might look and be like, and then I'm going to probably say like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm going to call a professional
Sure.
who's going to come out and not make it worse. They're going to make it better. They're going to fix it. And it's the same thing, I think, in every other industry. That like, yeah, you could go buy a house yourself and represent yourself. You could do a divorce yourself and represent yourself. But what's the cost of that going to be down the line?
Yeah, that's a huge thing right now, especially in light of like all the NAR stuff that's
Right.
going on, is that there's going to be, well, right now there's still a lot that's up in the air. Not much has been made official at this point, but there, in looking at just public chatter, there's a hypothesis that some buyers are going to start self-representing. And there's so many ways that you can get yourself into trouble, like not getting the right inspections,
Right.
just forgetting to take certain steps, or just opting for the cheapest selection anytime you're at a crossroads of having to make a choice. And you have like certain options for a reason, especially like getting inspections, be it like radon, termite, environmental, or one of the big things that goes outside of like the house itself is like the area that you're moving to. Is there something coming in that's going to have like a negative impact on the values, or does that just not fit the bill of what it is you're looking for? There was one neighborhood that I was taking a client through, and I was a little early, and one of the neighbors came out and said, oh, you don't want to move here. This building right here, they have these like weekly events, and it's just loud, and it jams up parking, and you can't get any sleep at night. So like things like that are, and it doesn't like end there, but that's just
Right.
one of thousands of examples of things that our experiences as realtors brings to the table to avoiding having somebody have like a really nasty home buying experience, then turning around and putting the house up on the market again to sell, or just being stuck in a place that you hate and that you're miserable with. I mean, that's that's a cost benefit analysis that people have to look at. Is it worth cheapskating yourself, just being just short-sighted and not seeing the forest through the trees?
I agree. And I agree that that's a real important reason to have a professional. I wish when I was buying my house, my realtor said to me, like, this is a great neighborhood, but it doesn't turn over as much as some other neighborhoods where you'll have a lot more families that have children your age,
Right.
and, things of that nature, which, that would have been a great thing from a professional standpoint to know. And I think it's the same in our industry too, that like certain things come up that like you just don't think about. People don't think about because, you know, their kids are 5. Well, what happens when your kid goes to college or needs a car? That's always like, oh, my kid turned 17. Who's buying the car?
Right.
Who's
car
paying for the
insurance.
insurance?
I guess that's something I don't even think about, but yeah, I guess that's a big
Cell
thing.
phone, proms, senior trips, like, and they don't think about it. And then when they get to that point and you find out that a lot of those costs are already included in the child support they're getting, they're like, well, that's not fair. I'm like, that's why you needed to deal with it.
Welcome to the world.
Right.
Yeah. People are just thinking about now and today.
Yes.
Right.
They don't think forward, especially when they have young kids, because it is like I've said, you're going to be stuck with this person for the next 15 years.
It's like a balloon payment. It's really like, if you think about it, you're like, this kid is going to cost you significantly more money every year they're alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Up until they're 18, and then they're going to cost you a lot more than that.
I was thinking like an IED. It's just like that was planted 18 years ago, and then you're gonna step on that landmine. Like
I don't have kids, so I can say that.
I can say that. Yeah. Yeah.
So going back and trying to tie this in, because this is, I mean, kind of a real estate show, I mean, in the loosest possible terms. But what is the?
You're both realtors.
We're both
Yeah,
realtors.
it makes it a real estate show.
Yeah.
we are.
What are the most common situations where you guys feel you would need like the real estate advice? Like when, because I mean we've crossed paths with you, but just for anybody that doesn't know, like when does family law need a real estate opinion or a person to come through?
Go ahead. You have something to say?
So there's 2 options usually with the house is one person's going to buy the other person out, or they're going to list it for sale. So a lot of times they'll look to us for recommendations for agents who can handle that process, and who can handle, frankly, 2 people who do not like each other or want to be tied to each other anymore. So I think there's a level of contention between them, even though in a sales situation they have the common goal of get as much money as possible. But when you have people who like the fight, then you get, well, I don't like that offer, I don't like this, or I don't want to make these repairs.
But they don't even realize that they have a common goal.
Right. They don't even realize that.
They want the opposite no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll have issues where, like maybe we need recommendations for people to come in and make repairs, or somebody who might be able to do, a CMA just to give us an idea of what we're looking at. Cause, a lot of times we'll do appraisals, but they also cost, $500-$600, and some people don't have the money. And a CMA can give like guidance at least. Can they possibly
like
keep
a
it?
ballpark it?
Yeah, like ballpark
right.
it. Like, can they, based on what they know about the mortgage and the potential house value, can a buyout even happen? And when you get people who both want the house, you can get into a bidding war. Like, all right, everybody give the best and final of what you're willing to pay the other party. Yeah. So it could be, if the husband and wife both want the house, you could say, all right, well, our appraisal or our agreed upon value is $500,000. You get one bid. How much over that are you willing to use for the equity position to take the house from the other party? And that is where they start getting upset because they don't want to overpay for it. And, sometimes people get smart and go, all right, like I'm going to back off of this. People are funny, like with appraisals, like they want the, if they're getting the money, they want the high appraisal. If they're paying the money, they want the low one. And you get, problems with that. Or when cases drag out, they're like, well, I want to reappraise it now. Like,
I know in those cases, and I've been involved in a lot of these scenarios of placing values on the homes for a multitude of reasons. I work heavily in the foreclosure world and also in divorce and estates. So in many cases, and even like relocation companies that I work for, a lot of times they're getting 2-3 opinions. One of the companies that I do a lot of work with is they'll always get 2 opinions on price no matter what. And if there is too far of a percentage difference in the values, then they'll bring in a third one to try and figure out, okay, if they're both that far off, both of them can't be right.
Right.
So that is a system of checks and balances to help like pull that into alignment. So that is, if that situation ever arises, that's always just like another option, is just getting a third opinion. Then from at that point, then you can triangulate the value and have a more realistic idea of what the actual value is going to be.
Right.
That's a pretty normal
Yeah, we
occurrence.
try and get the parties to agree to use the same expert.
Right.
Because then there's not an argument. What's the value? And then the statement is like, well, that's who we both choose to use as our expert as to what the property is valued. That's the value we're using.
Right.
Like, that's what it is. But there is sometimes where each party will get an appraisal, and then they're different, and it creates,
More
you know,
variability.
craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
from what I can tell, like, so anybody that I know that I've come across is like a divorce situation. It's not usually happy. It's never happy, but it's
No.
very rarely like everybody work together. So when they come to us and they're talk to like Omar or me or any other real estate agent, a lot of times they'd rather have you guys recommend a neutral third party that is Switzerland, that they don't actually
almost
have a
takes that-
relationship.
Because they don't
Right.
trust each other. They don't trust
Right.
each other.
Right.
Like, oh, you
Like,
recommended, you know, Bob Smith, and you did Dave Jones. They're like, nope, don't trust them.
Like if I'm
Yeah.
friends with somebody and he's getting divorced from his wife's like, you're not using him. Like he's your friend. Like, you're
Right.
not
Then they
gonna-
feel it's conflict of interest.
Right, and then I always go, he wants to sell it for the most, you want to sell it for the
Right.
most, you want to sell it for the most. You're all on the same team. Like, what difference does it make?
It's misconception from
Yeah,
both parties.
so sometimes it will be that, like, we'll submit names, we can't come to a resolution, and we submit it to the court, and the judge
they
tells
just
us
pick
who we're
somebody.
using.
Yeah.
So when you guys have to deal with real estate agents, what are some characteristics you want to see in that agent? What are some of the most annoying things they do? And is there anybody you want to run over with a bus right now? Tell me. You don't have to. But like, what are some things that you're looking for, like in a real estate agent partner, that you're like, hey, let's work with this person?
I think they'd be able to deal with that kind of acrimonious situation in a divorce. Like,
Definitely.
if it's somebody who doesn't like conflict or doesn't know how to manage people that don't agree, even though, like Allison said, they're all on the same team, that's not going to be good, because they're just going to be, kind of like, I don't know what to do here. This one says this. I don't, this one does that. Like, you got to give us guidance. And a lot of times what we'll do is when we write agreements is we'll say, realtor gets to decide everything. They get to decide the listing price. They get to decide the repairs. They get to decide price deductions. They get to decide what contract is getting accepted. And that way it takes it away from those people. So like, it's being familiar with those kinds of situations. And another scenario where we've had to use agents is where we have somebody who is owed money from a house on a refi. The refi doesn't take place, and the trigger is that the house has to be sold. So then you're now dealing with one person who's intractable, like because they're not complying with the agreement, and they're typically in possession of the house to be sold. So then we have to try to sell it out from under them. So that's a difficult situation a lot of times.
So that would be like a situation where the agreed upon time was before.
Yeah,
they're
so like they
selling.
get divorced, they go, okay, husband is owed $50,000 from the house.
When it sells.
That the other party, the wife's going to refi,
Refinance.
and then pay him out $50,000. So then that deadline comes and goes, doesn't get paid. You go to court, you get an enforcement motion that says, okay, now you get another chance to pay the money.
So that's a very common occurrence, not only in like the divorce situation. I see it happen in the States, but also with like landlords and tenants as well, where a landlord, they're free to sell a property at any time, assuming there's no like deed restriction or anything like that. And we have this, and we sell actually quite a few of these. We take like portfolios from investors. Sometimes the tenants are cooperative and sometimes they're not. And in either case, anytime I'm working with a client who's new to me, and they haven't like worked with us with like our experience set, I'll prep them to say, look, like your tenant has no reason to cooperate whatsoever because this is inconveniencing them and they get nothing out of cooperation. That being said, we're prepared for that. If we always prepare for the uncooperative occupant of the property.
Right.
And we have like a very specific way of inconveniencing or minimizing the inconvenience to that person so that we don't lose any amount of cooperation that they're willing to give. Always making sure too that the tenant doesn't feel that like we're treating them less than or anything like that. They still need to be treated with dignity, with respect. And in this scenario that you're giving too, where you have the occupant of a separating couple who just probably doesn't want to cooperate, because my guess is that they're probably living there at a heavy discount, if not completely for free, and they don't want that meal ticket to end. So there is a very specific way of handling that person. And also too, just again, calling on past experiences, not having either party feel like you're favoring one side or the other, because even though those two people in the divorce situation are on opposite sides of the table, in the sale of the real estate, they are both clients to the agent 50-50 and equal. So it does take an emotionally mature and also a stronger, thicker-skinned person that's not going to get sucked up into that Tasmanian devil dust cloud.
Right.
It's definitely a more challenging arena for sure, and you absolutely want to. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot with someone who's not emotionally equipped to handle that, because it's a tricky situation. And I just know, again, having gone through it myself, I've been there in the situation. I've been in that dust cloud.
Right. Yeah.
So there, I've been on both sides of that, that scenario. There's definitely a right way to do it. It's never going to be easy, but it just takes proper planning, going in with the right expectations, just knowing that they're not going to get along and they're trying to argue with each other every step of the way. As long as you go in anticipating that, that is half the battle. Like, you can't go in with rose-colored glasses thinking that, like, both of these parties that hate each other and just want to bury each other, they're not going to try and get along. But you just, again, arm yourself knowing that going into the situation. It makes life so much easier.
It's true.
Also
It is
true.
very true.
Let's change gears up here a little bit, guys. You guys are both attorneys now. What's the least favorite job you've ever had prior to becoming an attorney? You take a minute and think about it.
It's a good one. You've obviously thought about this.
Oh, I hate all my jobs.
Wait a minute, I was your first boss out of college.
They're all equally tied for all.
I worked at Burger King for 4 years between
Burger
high school
King?
and college. Yeah.
Did you hate the food after?
No, because their food was good.
The food
The
was
hours sucked.
Is the grill marks on the burgers real?
Yeah.
They really?
Yeah, they have a basically grill, like a grill grate
Okay.
on a conveyor belt.
So, it
So
comes
you
out of presses?
stick. So no, you get the patties. They're frozen. You stick them on the grate. It goes through the machine. It flame broils them, and then they come out on the other side, and they're cooked. And they just flop out into a tray, and then you pick them up and put them on a sandwich.
When I was growing up, we didn't have Chick-fil-A, but Burger King was like the choice, if I had the choice of fast food places.
Yeah, their stuff is surprisingly real. I mean, it is real. Like, they are flame grilled. Their breakfast sandwiches were, real eggs, like, cooked on a griddle and all that. But when you closed, you were there until you were finished. So I would work nights till like 2 a.m. because it took that long to, like, clean up and do all the closing process and everything, and it was tiring.
So that's what made it the worst job. Just
Yeah, it was just the hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to be done. Like, when
Yes.
you're done, it's not when you're done.
Yeah, no, like, I could be done at 2 a.m. and then have to go back to open the next day. It was like that was a lot.
And Allison, for you, what's your
I don't
least-
think I have. I think I
You like
liked
every
all
job?
my jobs. I
You
mean,
didn't
like,
work for Omar, that's why.
I think I mainly always did something legal related.
Okay.
I mean, when I was younger, I babysat, and then sort of always worked in the legal industry in some aspect. And when I worked at restaurants or anything, it was fun.
See?
So I have no
You're the
complaints.
kind of employee everybody wants. There's nothing all the segments. We have a segment at the end that we try to find out what drives us crazy or what pisses us off this week. You're like, well, nothing. I like everything.
Oh no, that's not true. So not true.
And then
We could be here all day doing that.
I got a question. Can you tell whose fault it is when you usually look at a couple? You're like, well, I know you don't have to answer this because legally you don't have to. But I can usually tell. We meet family. You're like, well, it's definitely your fault. Going through it.
Maybe not right away.
Not right away, but you can get a sense.
You're like, well,
As you work on the case, you're like, oh,
this
now.
is why.
I always said I want to get a shirt for people once their divorce is over that says, this is why she's divorced, or that's why she's divorced. Because you do realize it, you realize oh, that's why you got divorced from him or her. And so that definitely plays out. Yeah, you can definitely figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would
I have
think
said
about
the phrase, there's a reason you're going through this process to somebody,
Now, if you have because hopefully they only go through it once if they have to. But if they're going through 3, 4, 5 times, you're like, well, maybe
It's a you
It's a
problem.
you thing.
there might
Yeah,
be the issue.
there's a common factor here.
Yeah, there's one.
So Tom,
Yes.
what was your least favorite job prior
Enterprise,
to?
enterprise rental car.
Yeah.
I woke up. I still actually have a closet full of ties. I'll phrase it. It got me into more doors than I ever thought. But
Car
I also,
doors?
what's that?
Car doors.
Car doors.
But you had to be there at 7 a.m. you made 30 grand a year and you worked till 6 maybe. So
Ugh.
like the time, like you would have to, after it's over, you have to go collect cars for the next day. All the time, you have to wear a shirt and tie because you graduated, you have a degree. They want you to look like you're there. Like I wore this tie, and like the tie would always get sucked up in the vacuum cleaner.
The bottoms are frayed.
The bottoms are all frayed. So I keep this rack of ties in my closet. And be like, well, it's not that. No matter what it is, I look at the ties. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that anymore.
How
But-
far you've come.
It's funny though because later on, like when you're interviewing, people will look and they're like, "Oh, you worked in enterprise." They know you're a hard worker. You graduated because they only hire college graduates.
Oh, really?
That you're willing to work for almost no money because you make 30 grand a year and you work long hours. So they're like, everything's going to feel like a great jump up after that. But it got me into a few doors after. But that job was the most like. By year 3, like you look at me, you're like, wow, you're like one of those cold, dead dolls. My eyes are just sitting there. I'm like, wow, you want the insurance? No? Cool. Next. So we're going to do another segment. We're going to do, we have questions that nobody asked us, but we're going to switch it up a little bit this week. We're going to do opinions that nobody asked for, because nobody cares. So what I'm going to rank these on is because Omar and I talk all the time about these things, and I'm sure you guys see it in attorney speak, but people will post motivational quotes in the morning on Facebook or whatever, and they're like, this is going to inspire somebody. So what I'm going to do, I have a couple of these, I have 4 of these. We're going to rank these slogans between 1 and 5, with 5 being awesome, and give me a few things that you would change or like what it does for you when you hear it. And we're just going to kind of go down the line. You guys can all talk about it. So first one, don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Without explaining anything, what was your initial number on that one? Like 1 to 5. 1 being as bad as it can
Is
get.
there a 0?
No, it's gonna be 1.
That's a 1.
That's a 1.
That's a loaded question.
Do you know who wrote it? That's
No.
might be all right. So just give me your initial reaction.
So,
This is not a number. This is not a number.
is it me saying it to someone with my knowledge set?
No,
or is
it's
it
somebody
just-
I don't
posting
even
it
know
on
what it
Monday
means.
morning.
Okay, so somebody posting it on a Monday morning. It's a 1.
Same.
It does nothing for me. It like really buy real estate and wait. It's so dumb and contrived and just comes from such an inauthentic place. I hate it. We don't even need to talk about it. It's just awful.
You came up with it.
I did. I found
You
it.
presented
I
it.
presented it.
He's just a messenger.
You can't buy happiness, but you can buy real estate. ... It's the same thing. This makes me want to choke whoever writes it. Like
That's terrible.
awful.
It's
I mean, I have like something printed out on my scanner at home, and it says money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you a yacht big enough to pull up along next to it. That
You
one,
can call it
that one I
happiness. You can call
liked.
the yacht happiness,
Yes,
though.
you could, but that's
But this is
stupid.
somebody like
Yeah.
this to me screams somebody who's just like, I need to post something every day, and I think this is going to get somebody over. This does nothing to push anybody over the edge. Omar, number?
this was already a 1.
Okay, cool. We don't need to talk about that. Next one.
No.
Monday. This one, I want your opinion on this one too. So you can give me a number and opinion. Mondays are the start of the work week, which gives you 52 new beginnings every year.
Aww.
Number?
1.
I'll give that a 2 in comparison to the last 2.
It seems great. compared to
Right? Yeah.
Again, it's just a cheap meaningless. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, when I hear this, if you need 52 times a year to restart, you're doing something wrong.
You're not
Right.
committing to anything
That's
at all.
problematic.
Like if you're restarting 52 times, you're definitely not making any progress. And if you count your days where it's like, well, every Monday I'm going to restart. This makes me like,
It's New Year, New Me. Except
Every
new
week.
Right. And
New
technically,
week,
you
new
could
me.
take that down the rat hole and go, it's a new me every
Yeah.
day. You know.
and this person's not. I would promise you, whoever is listening to this or has this like posted up, not making much progress. Last one. Better to jump and make a mistake than not to start.
That's a 5.
5.
I can't wait to pan to the slow head turn. I'll make a meme out of that for Omar. Be like,
Say what? I would say it's a 3.
based on the last few.
Yeah,
we've had.
based upon the last few, definitely.
Yeah. 3.
I think its intent in this one is actually smart. Like I think but it doesn't.
It's delivered poorly.
It doesn't motivate me to start. It doesn't give me anything to do. It's just like kind of a platitude that people will.
I think it's like it's referencing like paralysis analysis, just overthinking something to death and talking yourself out of taking action on anything.
Then again, the opposite of this is starting like we started this podcast, and this is what you wind up with. So like,
but here we are.
yeah, here we are.
Did he find that quote because you posted it?
No.
Almost
But
every day.
It's a concept that we talk about a lot though, because we have so many theoretical ideas, and I think most people do that just they never pull the trigger on. And I can say from personal experience that there's leaps of faith that I've taken on myself. And it can only be on myself because I know what I'm going to bring to the table in any given situation. It could be, a career shift or just completely disrupting and changing gears in a very important component of my life. And it's always scary right before making that transition and taking that action. But some of the best things that have ever happened to me in life happened after taking that scary leap of faith on myself.
Like me coming to join Allie.
It does have. That's the one that has the most meat on the bone out of these quotes.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
That's a valid one in my opinion.
I don't think it's going to motivate anybody to do anything, but the sentiment is right. So
One of my business coaches uses kind of like a variant of that, which is lawyers especially, we try to make things perfect before we do them, and sometimes it's better to do the thing and work on perfecting it after, because it's that analysis paralysis.
Course
that you
correction
get.
is a form of perfection.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it's a better method because at least you have a metric of how good you actually did.
Right.
Not theoretical, but like actually.
Yeah.
And I know some people that aren't the brightest people, but they're smart enough to course correct and eventually land with success just by trying.
Right.
But being smart enough to analyze their successes and failures and course correct. And in many cases, I think if people hit success the first time, I think in many cases it was probably luck on top of preparation.
Yeah.
But most cases, like I said, it's usually you got to walk a path and just keep refocusing to do it. And that's really a guaranteed success at some point.
because the real is you're not going to suck 100 times. I mean, maybe you do, but like odds are that you might suck the first 10, then you get slightly better.
And you have 52 times to be able to correct that.
I mean, every
each
week,
year.
every week, maybe we just combine all of them.
Come on.
Don't buy real estate. Buy it every day, every Monday.
Right.
Like all in one giant super quote that doesn't motivate anybody. So, Allison, I know you're excited for this one. What pisses you off this week? What grinds my gears? Everybody, you don't have to have something, but if you have something that you get off your chest, you feel free.
Stupidity.
I'm listening.
I just think that there is such a lack of common sense these days. People have no common sense. They'll say like, do you have the number for, I don't know, the restaurant? And I'm like, off the top of my head, no, but you could probably Google it in 3 seconds in the time you're asking me. That no one wants to take any steps. And so based upon that, they just are okay with being stupid.
Yeah.
And I find that if they just use common sense, it would be that much better, that the answer would be right there. So I started saying that common sense ain't so common. Like that's going to be my phrase for...
Is it because I would have put you on here next week and graded that quote?
Exactly. I was like, that's going to be my quote for 2022. And every year I keep going, it's still my quote. It's still my quote. Because it amazes me.
It's, there's not much to add to that. Like people are dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People are inherently
and they're helpless. I think.
So helpless.
Yes.
Like if you don't make it easy for them, and going back to marketing, that's actually the biggest thing they'll teach you marketing is like make it easy for people to take an action. Mm-hmm. Because if you're like, hey, go to my website and sign up, you would be amazed. Like people go to a website like, well, where do I sign up? And there's a box there that says like sign up. They're like, well,
there's like a bullseye on it.
Right.
like I
Right
went, but
here.
I couldn't find anything. And you're like, well, you got to actually take them to the actual thing, or the only thing they can do is type their name, and they're like, oh, this is so easy.
Right.
And that's what you have to do. Just like almost dumb it down. For you, anything to piss you off this week?
People that are unreasonable for the sake of being unreasonable.
Okay.
Some people just like to be difficult, and I'm sure you get this question all the time. They'll go, "How much is my case going to cost?" I'm like, "Well, I'm in control of a certain set of factors, and the one that I'm not is the person you're married to. And if they decide to act like an unreasonable jackass, I have no control over that. If that makes me have to do 10 things I would not ordinarily have to do in your case because they are making me do it, it is what it is." But what I'm finding is that, a lot of other attorneys are taking that tack. Like, they're just difficult because they want to be, or maybe they don't know any other way to be. And I think it just
Or
makes...
they think that, like, the client thinks that's a good thing.
Right. Like, you'll get people go, "I want a barracuda, I want a shark, I want this." I'm like, I can take a strong position when I need to, but I'm not going to be an asshole just to be an asshole to somebody.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we have to keep working with these people. So like, I'm not going to trash a relationship with another professional just to make somebody happy.
No.
It's not how you...
When it's not going to change the ultimate
doesn't change the outcome.
They just think that you're working for them, even though it doesn't change anything.
Oh yeah, people get mad. Like, if you have a collegial relationship with your opposing counsel, they're like, what are you doing? Like, why are you talking to them? Like, oh, now you're in cahoots with each other.
Right.
Like, it's...
And I'm like, we've been working together for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like,
I can see that happening, actually, because like from the non-trained law, I'm like,
people get paranoid.
Yeah, they're like, "What are you talking about? What are you giving away?
Right.
What are you trying to? What are you going
Right.
to cost me money?" Like, it's like, no, because it goes back to the thing. Like, we're all trying to make the same thing happen
Right.
as easy as possible. But the biggest problem is probably who you marry.
Yes.
It's probably-
And a lot of
that's
times people
probably-
don't want to recognize that.
or themselves.
Or themselves. Like we'll get people that'll go like, "Okay, this person does, coke on the weekends and they drive drunk with the kids." And I'm like, "Were those things happening while you were married?" Yes. I'm like,
Or before you even got
before you even got married, this person had all these horrible habits, and then now they're upset about them, but they spent 15 years married to the person.
Condoning it.
I can
Yeah,
change it.
condoning it. And I'm
I
like,
can
but how can you complain about it
No,
now?
or they say like, they can't be around my kids. They can't have the kids to themselves because they drink every weekend. They do this. They do, they're doing coke. They're doing, and I was like, well, has that always been the way? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, have you ever left them alone with the kids before?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, every
Yep,
weekend.
yep.
Every weekend when I work.
Or we used
And I
to
was
smoke
like-
up together on the couch and like with
Yeah.
the kids in the, in
I'm
the
like-
room, and now it's a problem.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, that's not going to change. Like, that's your lifestyle, essentially. And that does make it difficult.
Yeah.
Omar, if you say nothing again,
Mine always are about driving. I think we've covered a lot of the obvious like heartburns and social media drops. And
Right.
one of the things that drives me nuts is when you have two lanes going the same direction, and it's like, all right, you're trying to pass someone, and then that person now just like speeds up to deliberately not let you pass. So I've created a counter move to that in anticipation of that person that just wants to infect their misery. It's very simple. What I do is, okay, if I'm trying to get around like this said person, I'll speed up so that they speed up and close up the gap, and then just slam on my brakes, assuming that there's nobody behind me, and let them just race in front of me and then get behind them.
now you're stuck behind this person who's going 10 miles.
Right.
Or I can usually get in another lane at that point.
I love that you do all these aggressive things in a truck that has your name and number and address all over it.
Well, I have to drive like when I'm driving my work vehicle, like I let everyone. I'm like, yeah, come on through, everybody.
Yeah.
You get to merge, and you get to merge, and you get to merge.
You're getting nowhere.
Yeah. And one day I had someone like comment like, yeah, like you cut me off. I'm like, no, I definitely didn't cut you off. And I'm like, my wife was driving, and she forgot that my contact information is
On there.
yeah. Because I
Oh my
definitely
God,
didn't cut anybody
that's
off. in
great.
I'm
my-
gonna wrap your contact info on my car and cut everybody off.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, it's something I wish people would have told me about before I bought a house. It's weeds.
Oh.
So I didn't realize until this week, because I was like, oh, it's fine. Like, I'll just get to it. Weeds have started to grow, and like they don't really stop low. They just keep growing up,
go
and my
fast.
house looks insanely dirty. The people who had my house before me were like, they must have been outside. They left me all kinds of lawn equipment. I don't have no green thumb, so I sit there and I'm like, well, let me try. So I was out there pulling weeds. My hands actually cramped up on a Saturday night from pulling these stupid weeds, and I don't know what's a weed, what's a flower. I pulled one out, and then I was saying to my friend, he's like, it might be poison. I don't know. I might be breaking out with stuff, but either way, so weeds, I am 100% out on. Like, I'm just going to spray that the weed killer
Yep.
on everything.
Well, I have an amendment. Stupid neighbors that let shit fall in your yard and then you pretend it's not there.
Is it a tree? That
Oh,
just
yeah.
goes over?
Yeah.
I heard.
Yeah.
They're
It's
usually
still-
the most annoying
He has
trees.
not acknowledged it. Like, I think he's hiding in the house. And this giant fucking tree falls out of his yard over the fence and is laying in my yard. It is massive.
What kind of tree is it?
I don't know. One that should not be there. That is the type of tree. It does not,
maple.
one that does not belong on the
That makes a
ground.
difference?
Oh my
A
god.
Japanese rhododendron. of
Usually
the
they're
North-
berries, like the berry ones. Are the
It's
ones
not.
that
I
drive me
don't think
crazy.
it's a berry
The
tree.
They drop berries.
And of course, my husband had to be like, I told you that was the one that I thought was dead in the back. I'm like, I don't
He
need
gave
to
you
hear
that, I
this.
told you so.
I don't need to- Well, it's not on my property. It's on his. But apparently, the root system is in mine. So when I got home last week, I go in the backyard and I look, and there's this like area that, if I gardened, would be a flower bed, like in the back corner of the yard. And so like the dirt is all pushed up. So I'm like, what the heck's going on? And I go and I look. It's like a root that's this wide that is now pried out of the ground, and there's like a hole behind it in this flower bed where the rest of the tree used to be. It had spread. The main trunk was in their yard, and then this giant root is through ours, along with the tree and the bent fence. And now our dog goes back out there, and she's, of course, super interested in the tree and what might be like inside of it. And all I need is for her to realize she can go over the fence, and then we'll have a sprint party through the neighborhood. It's like, so that is, I emailed my insurance company, and I'm waiting on them to get
They're
back to
such a
me.
pain to deal with too.
Yeah. So hopefully they get
Talk
back to
about not
me.
working together, insurance company. different episode.
So you get one professional and one personal. There.
All mine are just ignorant and like the weeds. So,
The weeds.
I hate weeds. And the neighbor in question has weeds everywhere, and they come through the fence, and then they infect my yard. That was the other thing.
There's no stopping them.
No,
Once
they're everywhere. If it's creeping Charlie, forget it. It's all over.
I think you gotta hit like the fence line with like Roundup to just create like a fire stop. It doesn't work. No.
I've tried literally everything. I've put up barriers because
Yeah.
it's a chain link fence.
Right.
Barriers. I've done
Ah,
Roundup.
so-
We've sprayed
Oh,
the
so
Roundup
it goes-
through the link
Yeah.
to try to kill it on his side. And
Yeah.
it still comes through.
And it still comes through.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Creeping Charlie's the worst. Like,
Maybe
you
a
cannot
moat.
get rid of it.
Yeah, put a moat.
There you
Boat in
go.
there.
Or I'm just going to get a flamethrower and just.
Yeah, I've seen those. They actually have flamethrowers that'll take care of weeds now.
Yeah.
What?
That
Yeah,
seems like the
burn
best
the
way to
weeds.
do it.
Like,
I just
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
Aquanet and a lighter.
I don't have any of that.
I was gonna say, he probably doesn't have any Aquanet at home.
Talk about
I
things
actually
that
have it for
are
cheerleading.
insensitive.
Sorry, Tom.
So if there is one point that people might fast forward to in this episode, is going to be the dad joke of the week, which everybody loves.
Yay!
So, dad jokes. Did you guys have any dad jokes?
I only have the lawyer joke.
You had me with the lawyer joke. That.
Dad will
All
tell
right.
it.
What do you call 10,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start.
You're laughing a little too much at that.
Allison,
All right, I searched high and low.
good.
What do you call a frog that's parked illegally?
I don't know.
Toad.
That was unexpected.
That went over better than I thought it would.
That was good.
She's gonna be here all night.
That went over better than I expected.
Why did the bird join the gym? To work on his pecs.
Ah,
A personal trainer came over and asked if the bird needed help. He said, "No, I'll wing it." Then
he
the
says
trainer
it
said,
so seriously.
You know?
so his friend asked if he's going to post up on Facebook about it. He said, "No, but I might tweet about it."
There's got to be more legs to this joke.
It stops there.
I still like the toad one better, I think.
It was good.
So, we had the eclipse this week. Everybody was going crazy about it. Everybody had those stupid glasses. They were like trying to let them. I was told that I could see it through a colander. I tried, but it strained my eyes.
I thought thought he was really telling a story.
Thank you guys so much, Allison.
Thank
Ally,
you.
guys are
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
hang
This
out.
is fun.
Yeah. Thank you for coming hang out, and nobody might watch it, but
Thanks for
it's gonna
having
be a lot of
us.
fun. So, thank you guys.